going on, campers? This is Mark over at Chicago Music Exchange, and today I'm going to give you a brief history of the Fender Precision Bass in all its glory. We're going to go through the evolution of the bass. Since the Precision Bass's inception, it's had a few design changes that have made a tremendous impact on recorded music from the first generation all the way up until the American Pro Series that we know today. Throughout this video, I'm going to be playing these basses that you see behind me, and of course this beautiful bastard that you see on my lap, through this 1969 Ampeg B15N. P basses and flip tops, they go together like peas and carrots, beans and cornbread, Jenny and Forrest, although Jenny kind of sucked, let's be honest. The real romance was between Bubba and Forrest. Rest in peace, Bubba. Miss you there. So what I've got here is an example of the first generation introduced in 1951 by Clarence Leo Fender. It's the version 1 precision bass. This one happens to be a 1953. Some important features on this guy would be the slab body. The big old hunka chunka that you see over here just has a great resonance to it. A nice meaty neck profile. These two pressed carbon bridge saddles here that give it a nice sort of like thuddy tone to it. The single coil pickup mimics the Telecaster guitar. It has a very focused sound. And these, this bass is so important because at the time of its inception, bands were getting smaller and louder, and the upright bass just couldn't hang, it couldn't hold up. So when Leo designed this, he wanted two things. One, he wanted amplification. He wanted his bass players to be heard. And two, he wanted guitar players to be able to play this even without having to worry about finding the right notes from the fretless instruments. So he added frets here and therefore called it the precision bass. So guitar players and anyone alike could be precise while they played the bass. Get my drift? So an important player that comes to mind that would play something like this would be Dusty Hill from ZZ Top. So now we're going to make our way into the second generation of the precision bass, produced from 54 to 57. Some really key features on something like this would be, first off, the saddles switch from that pressed carbon or the pressed fiber to a metal, so it's a lot more exciting, a lot brighter. It definitely cuts through the band a bit more. Also, the contoured edges, specifically the belly cut. Big guy like me totally appreciates that. Thank you, Clarence Leo. And then also the neck shapes, sort of evolved over time. This one has a nice V to it. It has a similar sound to the first generation. It might be just a hair brighter. Some important players on this one. A guy that comes to mind is going to be Sting for sure. Let's hear how it sounds. This one's been loved. It's seen some shit. This is the third generation. This is one of the most important innovations with the progression of the precision bass. This introduces the new patented split coil pickup. Now the reason that this is important is because as bands grew smaller and louder and the amps got turned up more and more, that single coil produces a 60 cycle hum. So in those days, innovators like Leo Fender were trying to eliminate that hum. And their efforts to buck the hum, they took the coil, they split it, and then they wound them in reverse and put them in that sweet spot. And just for whatever reason, just the way it was positioned and then the way that these were wound, and it just completely changed the game, it set the tone, pun intended, on how a electric bass should sound. And from this point on, you've got builders, luthiers that have tried to, reinvent the wheel, and it just doesn't get more classic than this. So that's the first key change, is this pickup. They also started introducing around this time between 57 and 59. They still had the maple fingerboard. They introduced the anodized gold pickguard, which is really, really classy. Individual bridge saddles per string. And that's important because, you know, one complaint, I guess, is that when you're going to tune these basses, the intonation in the upper register, which wasn't very commonly played back then, but still, they wanted to make sure that everything was perfectly in tune. So to have the intonation adjustability was really paramount back then, and made a great impact from this point forward. One person who comes to mind that would play a beautiful bass like this would be Dunn. So from, you know, when this model came out, you know, around 59, this one's a 60. From then until 1962, they were using the slab of rosewood, and then they switched to a veneer, you know, somewhere around 1962, and that just kind of became the standard after that. So this is representative of the slab boards before that change, and then of course in 65, from then on, they just started doing a lot of different stuff once CBS bought out the company. So as I mentioned, you know, an important player who would have played this style of bass would have been Jamerson. I mean, made this version of these basses really important. That's why the 62 reissue behind me exists. So here we go. So as time goes on, and CBS is picking up steam and trying to really bring these to the public, they wanted to make some changes that, you know, bass players will latch onto. So in 72, one of the first things that was done was the nut width down here. They shrunk it down to 1 5/8 of an inch. One of the main reasons that's important is because a lot of players who would use a jazz bass but wanted the P bass sound, they would get on this bass and they wouldn't feel completely out of place. The tug bar, the thumb rest that was down here, was because so many bass players were moving them up here because it was a much more practical place to rest their thumb. They just decided, okay, well, that's now the standard. So they put it in here. This 76 is awesome. The pickups at this point in the 70s were wound a little bit heavier, and just to accommodate for the heavier music and the louder music. So it has a really, really great gut punch to it. For the 70s basses, I mean, you know, players like Paul Simonen of The Clash would have really done something awesome on something like this. One other jump in the time frame, on the timeline of Fender, is they wanted to kind of get back to the roots and what really made them stand out. They wanted to take those benchmark years and reproduce them on a mass level to just kind of get the importance of their name back into the game. It has the slab of rosewood fingerboard. It has the covers. It would have come with the mutes underneath there, and it's got Funk Machine written all over it. So we're going to go back to playing a little bit more of Jamerson sound, because that's what this thing is designed to do. So throughout the 80s, there was a lot of different basses that came on the scene, like the Special, the P-Bass Special, the Elite series, early versions of the Elite series, with the 2 pickups on there. And then there were so many models floating around that Fender was like, all right, hold up, we just got to do, again, a back to basics sort of thing, that we just got to create a standard model. And that's what this is, the American standard. This thing has lived on for quite a while. I mean, up until now, around 2016. Of course, with the American series, I think it's time, as it's had a really great run, it's time to say goodbye to this and move on to the next thing in true Fender fashion. So, yeah, I'm going to give this thing a proper send-off.